2. We're still in South Carolina, and we're covering this age discrimination case with Mrs. Graves, and the person who actually was part of the alleged harassment is Harold Hawley, CPA, and he definitely was promoted since 2010. So let's go ahead and keep going. We can't say for sure if he did or did not do it. This is alleged based on the facts that were listed in the case, okay? So we're not considering him guilty for what was listed in the case. We're just talking about the facts that are listed on the case that are found when searching about this case. So I definitely want to give that disclaimer. So the other thing that I want to go ahead and jump into are the facts. So the facts that were listed on this case state that, okay, so he's hired now in 2004. So in the first meeting that Graves had with Mr. Hawley, she alleges that he wanted to replace her. So he just started 2004, and he already knew that he wanted to replace her as a procurement manager, and there was an insinuation that this was what he was hired to do, or that this was one of the responsibilities that he was supposed to take care of as part of his role, and that was to let her go. So it sounded like from the facts that this was a decision made by the school, that it was basically they wanted her not to be in that role anymore. So, and that does happen. I'm just surprised that it's happening in a school. Normally I see that in corporate America. Unfortunately, we have to face the fact that business sometimes is just business, and sometimes other things like loyalty and being with a company for 36 years sometimes just fall by the wayside, and that's just the sad truth, okay? But we have to understand that it does happen. So he met with her several times over 6 months from when he started. So, the conversations, obviously, in terms of what I was reading, was that they were kind of uncomfortable, okay? So you've been here 36 years, you've been working diligently to do your job, and then you got this new person coming in, Mr. Haley, and he's saying to you, basically, we want to replace you. I mean, we basically want you out of this role. So as part of that, he's offering a reassignment to another role, and usually if it's a reassignment with the pressure to kind of resign, so to speak, it's usually not going to be a lateral move to the same type of pay and position. Usually it's going to be a position that's different, probably in pay and title. It's basically to say that right now this procurement manager role, basically the school is saying they're not seeing what they want to see in terms of performance, and therefore we need to replace you. That's a hard conversation to have with anyone, and anyone who has to have that conversation as a leader, I feel for them, because I know it's a hard conversation, and sometimes it's true that it does need to happen because maybe there's been performance issues for whatever reason, and those issues haven't been overcame. So basically they're still there. And they have been addressed, and I'm not saying in this case because those facts were not included, but usually in that situation as an HR leader, you want to make sure those issues were addressed, and usually document, right? So in this situation, it wasn't mentioned, so it's only an assumption that they would follow some type of progressive discipline or progressive change that needs to happen, because it does have to happen sometimes in situations, but you need to make sure you're documenting what was done that was in fairness to the employee. And also when you're dealing with education, they're usually backed by the government, so they have other laws that they have to adhere to also. There's different protocols. So basically, just to get back into the facts here, they had those conversations, and he basically decided, since she wasn't willing to voluntarily take the reassignment to another role, she wasn't voluntarily willing to resign, and it looks like they weren't voluntarily trying to terminate her. They were basically just putting the pressure on her. And honestly, that is a horrible, horrible place to be when you're getting the pressure to resign. That's horrible. That is just, I mean, can you imagine how she must have felt? She's been there 36 years and now you're pressuring me to get out. That's horrible, right? So essentially, so she has to deal with this. And let's say that she is 66. I just use as an example, if she started working when she was 30 for the school and it was 36 years, that she would be 66. So if that's true, or even close to 66, right? Can you imagine how she felt? All right. So a lot of things are changing already physically and stuff for you. I mean, that's just part of nature. And then you're being forced out. Let's just call it what it is. So she didn't want to stop. She felt like she was still in a position to handle the role. However, they didn't feel the same. So when she didn't voluntarily resign and when she didn't voluntarily go into a different position, what they did was they worked around her to get things done. So they took the responsibilities away from her without telling her. So she was basically blacklisted from her role. Let's just call it what it was. She wasn't able to do her role anymore because now they had employees going to someone else to get the questions answered, to get things approved. I don't know who that someone else is because the facts didn't say that, but it did say that they would go around her to get things approved and done. And basically, she didn't really have her role or responsibilities anymore. So can you imagine you're going to the office expecting to log in and do your responsibilities, make your decisions, and guess what? You're no longer making them. You're just sitting there looking pretty. They're just waiting for you to be gone. So that's just what happened in this situation. So she resigned. So in 2005, after an incident where Mr. Haley called her and another employee into the office and told her that he was tired of her, he did it in front of another employee. Why? Why? Because witness for the school. That's why that happens. It was for a witness for the school. It wasn't to help her. It wasn't to help her. It was a witness for the school now to say that he had a conversation with her and her work wasn't up to par. So now that we have this conversation and now we have a witness on our side who can say that I told you you're not doing a good job or whatever. It helps the school and not her. So now he's really setting her up for failure, and it's like, and this is like, even if it was true, even if what she did was true, there is a witness factor that has to be considered. So now she's like feeling it. She's feeling the pressure, like they obviously don't want me here. They're not going to allow me to work. So she resigned. Right? Right? So employees stopped coming to her. She's not able to make decisions. She's not able to do her job. So she felt it was a constructive discharge, and she did resign, and she filed a lawsuit. However, because she was the school follows federal law because it's education tied into government, etc., government funding or whatever. She didn't, unfortunately, follow the proper protocol to handle her grievance. And so her lawsuit failed because of that. Because you have to go through a specific grievance procedure with the school, exhaust all of that option before you go to the courts. And if you don't do that, then your lawsuit is basically just going to fail. And that's what happened to her. So basically she was forced out. She did resign. And if she would have waited for them to terminate her, it may have been different. She may not have the same rules to follow with a wrongful termination. I'm not 100% sure. But in this situation, based on the facts that she did resign, she considered a constructive discharge, but however, the courts did not. So she lost her case. I'm not 100% sure what happened to her. I did do a search, and it looks like if it is the same person, in about 2021, which is about 11 years after this happened. If it is the same person, it does say Dorothy M. Graves, and she was older, then she passed away. God bless her heart.